Welcome back, Econ Studs. Part 3 of Supply and Demand, the final part of the trilogy, Equilibrium. Or as we would say, it's the place where the number of buyers equals the number of sellers in a market. It is the place we want to get to. It is our happy place, where it's found on a graph. Again, I'm going to have price on the vertical axis, quantity on the horizontal axis. The curve that's downward sloping is demand. The curve upward sloping is supply. Guess what? X marks the spot. This is where quantity of demand equals quantity of supply, and it does something very, very cool for a market. It establishes the price in the market. If you thought that sellers established the price in the market, you're wrong. If they set the price too high, people won't buy it. So it is a combination of buyers and sellers coming together to establish a price, and it's established where the quantity of demand equals the quantity supplied. In other words, it's saying where the number of buyers equals the number of sellers. Now, the great thing about a market is that it wants to be in equilibrium. If you've seen Lord of the Rings, I say it's like the ring that wants to get back to Mordor. And I have a couple examples to show how this kind of works. Let's start in a market. Go ahead and draw my demand curve, my supply curve, and let's say that right now the price is up here at P1. When we're at P1, where it hits the demand curve, I have quantity demanded. And I go all the way over the supply curve, I have quantity supplied. This right here is a large gap in our market, and it's known as a surplus, meaning the amount wanting to be sold this price, it's much higher than the amount that wants to be consumed. So what's a business to do? They're going to notice that their product is not selling. If their product is not selling, then what's going to happen is they're going to start lowering the price. And as they lower the price, people will start consuming more of it. And this pattern will happen until we get to equilibrium and we've established our market price, which gets us to that happy place when the quantity demanded equals the quantity supplied. What about on the flip side? When the price is set too low. Let's say the price is set down here. Here, you have your quantity supplied where that P1 hits the supply curve, and I go over the demand curve to get the quantity demanded. Now, the quantity demanded is much greater than the quantity supplied. We have a shortage. And if you're a business and you notice that you're always selling your good, what are you going to do? You as a business want to maximize profits, you will start raising your price. And as you raise your price, you're going to start moving along the supply curve. And as the price goes up, people are going to start demanding less of the quantity. You'll just move along the demand curve until the point you eventually get back to market equilibrium. And you've again gotten to that point where you've established your market price. This movement towards equilibrium we read about earlier comes from a guy named Adam Smith, and this movement back towards equilibrium is the work of the invisible hand. No one is forcing this price to come back to equilibrium, and yet these market forces, these things of how business wants to get rid of their goods, how buyers want to buy certain goods, is going to always bring us back to equilibrium, and that is why the market functions. So to end with this question, what happens to a market price and quantity when one curve shifts? And Mankiw says it's a three-step process. And you need to figure out, one, which curve is going to shift, two, which way it's going to shift, left and right, not up and down, and then three, what happens to the new price and quantity as a result of this. here is my scenario. Let's say we have a cold streak hits the nation of Colombia and a freeze destroys a crop of coffee beans. What's going to happen in the market for coffee? I'm going to draw my graph. I have price on the vertical axis, quantity on the horizontal axis. Go ahead and draw a downward sloping demand curve and upward sloping supply curve. Now, if I'm looking at this freeze destroys coffee beans, I got to figure out first, is this going to impact the demand curve or the supply curve? Let's look at the demand curve first. IP 10. Is it impact income? No. What about price-related goods? What's the related good in this case? I don't think it's going to work. Taste? Taste is just like environmental thing, like the temperature or the weather, etc. changes taste or consumer habits. So I don't think it's that. Expectations? Not yet. And then finally, we have number of buyers. I don't think it fits any of those 5 of the demand curve. And then on the supply curve, I have INET, input prices. Is coffee beans an input into coffee? Could be. What about number of sellers? Does it stop the number of sellers? I think input price is a better option. How about expectations? Do we see a future consumption patterns, future price changes? No. What about technology? No, we're not seeing a new tool that harvests coffee beans better. We've seen a freeze destroying coffee beans. So I think the best answer here is its input prices is what's going to be impacted. So it's going to impact my supply curve. I got to figure out it's going to cause the supply curve to shift to the right, which is more, or to the left, which is less. Well, we have less coffee beans now, so I'm going to shift my supply curve to the left. Call this S1. My original price and quantity when I was in equilibrium was Q1, P1. And now with this coffee bean freeze, I have Q2, where the new equilibrium is met, and a new price established where the supply and demand come together with the new supply curve. I have P2. So it appears from this that because of this freeze in coffee beans, in the market for coffee, the price will go up and the quantity will go down. Sad for consumers. That's it for supply and demand. Come with questions. Remember, when in doubt, graph it out.